The massive warship drifted through space like a living nightmare. Its hull was not made of metal or plastic, but of something that breathed and pulsed with dark veins running across its surface. This was the Blood Talon, flagship of the Zethrak. 7th Fleet, and it carried death to every world it visited. Commander Vex Thaler stood on the bridge, his 12-foot frame casting long shadows across the organic floor. His razor-sharp claws clicked against the living console as he studied the holographic display showing the next target. Like all Zethrak, he was built for killing. His black exoskeleton could stop bullets, his 6 arms could tear through steel, and his 4 red eyes could spot prey from miles away. The Zethrak had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years. They came from Titronus Prime, a world where only the strongest survived. Every creature on their home planet had evolved to kill or be killed. The Zethrak had won that endless war by becoming the perfect predators. They were faster than cheetahs, stronger than elephants, and smarter than dolphins. Evolution had created them to hunt, and hunt they did. Vex had never lost a battle. In his 50 years of military service, he had conquered 47 star systems for the Empire. Each victory followed the same pattern. The Zethrak fleet would arrive at a world and broadcast a simple message: submit or die. Most species chose to submit. The smart ones knew they could not win against the apex predators of the galaxy. Those who chose to fight learned quickly why the Zethrak ruled among the stars. Their bioships were grown in massive breeding pools, not built in factories. Each vessel was alive, able to heal damage and adapt to new threats. The weapons they carried fired concentrated death that could melt through any armor. Their warriors were bred for combat from birth, trained to kill before they could walk. The bridge around Vex pulsed with a steady heartbeat. The walls were covered in a sticky membrane that could absorb impact and redistribute force. Organic tubes carried nutrients and information throughout the ship like blood vessels in a body. Everything about Zethrak technology was alive, and everything alive served the purpose of making war. Lieutenant Crix approached Vex with the latest intelligence reports. She was young for a Zethrak warrior, only 30 years old, but already. She had killed more enemies than most soldiers see in their entire careers. Her claws were stained with the blood of a dozen different species, each one now extinct or enslaved. Commander, the scouts have returned from the target system, Crix reported, her voice a low growl that made human ears bleed. The species calls themselves humans. They inhabit the 3rd planet from their star, a world they name Earth. Vex studied the data with mild interest. The humans looked pathetic, even by the standards of prey species. They were small, soft, and had no natural weapons to speak of. No claws, no fangs, no armor plating. They were pink and fragile like newborn larvae. Their technology was primitive, barely achieving faster-than-light travel in the past century. How? Many ships do they possess? Vex asked, though he expected the answer to be disappointing. Approximately 2,000 vessels, mostly cargo ships and exploration craft. Perhaps 300 could be considered military ships, though they are armed with simple kinetic weapons and basic energy systems. Vex clicked his mandibles in amusement. 2,000 ships sounded impressive, until you realized that a single Zethrak biocruiser could destroy 50 human vessels without taking damage. The humans had spread across dozens of star systems, but they were like insects compared to the Zethrak war machine. What about their ground forces? Vex continued his assessment of the target. Infantry armed with projectile weapons and simple explosives. No powered armor, no energy shields, no genetic enhancements. They appeared to rely on basic tactics and numerical superiority. This was becoming more disappointing by the moment. Vex had hoped for a challenge, something to break the monotony of easy conquests. The last 3 species had surrendered without firing a shot, once they saw the Zethrak fleet. At least the humans might provide some entertainment before they inevitably submitted. The tactical display showed the human colonies scattered across their small section of the galaxy. They had established settlements on worlds that the Zethrak would consider barely habitable. Desert planets, frozen moons, asteroid mining stations. The humans seemed willing to live anywhere, no matter how harsh the conditions. Interesting, Vex muttered as he examined the colony data. They spread like a plague, these humans. Most species stay close to their home world, but these creatures scatter across the stars. Should we begin with their home world, Commander? Crix asked, eager to begin the slaughter. Vex considered the question carefully. The Zethrak way was to strike at the heart first, destroying the enemy's leadership and breaking their will to fight. But something about the human spread pattern made him pause. They were not centralized like most civilizations. They had no single point of failure. No, he decided. We will begin with one of their colony worlds. Something remote to test their response. If they abandon their colonies to protect their home world, we will know they are cowards. If they come to fight for every settlement, we will know they are fools. Crix brought up the colony data on the main display. Dozens of human settlements appeared as glowing dots on the star map. Most were small farming communities or mining operations. Nothing that looked particularly important or well defended. This one, Vex selected a world marked as New Texas. It has a large civilian population and minimal military presence. We will make an example of it that will echo across human space. The orders went out across the Zethrak fleet. 50 bioships began their journey toward the human colony, carrying 10,000 of the Empire's finest warriors. It was massive overkill for such a primitive target, but Vex believed in overwhelming force. Better to use too much power than too little. As the fleet prepared to jump to hyperspace, Vex felt the familiar excitement of an upcoming hunt. Soon, he would add the humans to his list of conquered species. They would learn what every other race in the galaxy had learned. The Zethrak were the apex predators, and everything else was prey. The Blood Talon's living engines pulsed with power as it entered hyperspace, carrying death toward an unsuspecting human colony. Behind it, 49 other bioships followed, like a pack of hungry wolves. They were the perfect killing machines, evolved over millions of years to hunt and destroy. They had no idea they were about to meet their match. Jake Morrison wiped the sweat from his forehead as he watched his cattle graze in the morning sun. New Texas was a good world for farming, with wide-open plains that reminded colonists of Earth's old American frontier. The red soil was rich and fertile, perfect for growing crops and raising livestock. Jake had built a good life here with his wife Mary and their 2 children. The sky was clear blue, with only a few white clouds drifting lazily overhead. Jake was thinking about fixing the fence around the north pasture when the shadows began to fall. At first, he thought it was just a large cloud blocking the sun. Then he looked up and saw something that made his blood run cold. Massive shapes were descending from space, blotting out the sky like giant organic meteors. They were not the clean metal ships the humans built, but twisted things that looked like they were grown rather than constructed. Dark veins pulsed across their surfaces, and strange appendages writhed from their hulls like tentacles. Jake dropped his tools and ran toward his house, shouting at the top of his lungs, "Mary, get the kids, get the emergency kit." His voice carried across the farmyard as the alien ships continued their descent. He could hear similar shouts coming from neighboring farms as other colonists spotted the invasion fleet. The Zethrak landing craft touched down in fields and pastures across New Texas, crushing crops and livestock under their massive bulk. Steam hissed from their organic hulls as they cooled in the planet's atmosphere. Then hatches began to open with wet, sucking sounds, and the nightmares emerged. The Zethrock warriors that poured from the ships were every human's worst fear made. Real, 12 feet tall with black exoskeletons that gleamed like polished obsidian, they moved with the fluid grace of born predators. Their 6 arms ended in razor-sharp claws that could slice through steel, and their 4 red eyes scanned the landscape for prey. Commander Vex stepped from his personal transport and breathed the air of New Texas. It was sweet with the scent of growing things, untainted by the smell of fear and death that hung over conquered worlds. That would change soon enough. He raised one clawed hand and gave the signal his warriors had been waiting for. The hunt began. Zethric warriors spread across the colony like a plague of giant insects. They had done this countless times before, on countless worlds. The pattern was always the same. The prey would see them coming, panic, and either flee or cower in terror. Then the killing would begin, swift and brutal, until the survivors begged for mercy. But something was different on New Texas. Instead of running or hiding, the humans did something the Zethric had never encountered before. They fought back. Jake Morrison met the first Zethrock warrior at his front door with a shotgun in his hands. The alien towered over him, its 4 eyes glowing with predatory hunger. It raised its claws to strike, expecting the human to freeze in terror, like all prey species did when faced with a superior predator. Instead, Jake pulled the trigger. The shotgun blast caught the Zethrock in the chest, punching through its exoskeleton and sending it staggering backward. Green blood sprayed across the porch as the creature roared in pain and rage. It was not dead, but it was hurt, and that was something that rarely happened to a Zethrock warrior. Jake pumped another shell into the chamber and fired again. This time the alien went down, thrashing on the ground as its life ebbed away. Jake had just done something that most galactic species considered impossible. He had killed a Zethrock in single combat. Across New Texas, similar scenes were playing out at farms and settlements throughout the colony. Humans emerged from their homes with hunting rifles, mining explosives, and even improvised weapons. They did not cower or flee. They stood their ground and fought with a desperation that shocked the invading warriors. Colonel Lisa Hayes commanded the Colonial Defense Force garrison stationed near the main settlement. Her force was small, only 500 Marines equipped with standard kinetic weapons and basic armor. When the Zethric ships landed, she knew her soldiers were facing impossible odds. "All units, this is command," she broadcast over the military communication network. "We are under attack by hostile alien forces. Fall back to defensive positions and prepare for siege operations. Do not attempt to engage superior numbers in open terrain." But even as she gave the orders, Lisa knew they might be her last. The Zethrock warriors advancing toward her positions moved like killing machines, their claws gleaming in the afternoon sun. Each one was worth 10 human soldiers in raw combat ability. The first wave of aliens hit the human defensive line like a tsunami of death. Zethrock warriors leaped over barricades and charged through gunfire that would have stopped any human attack. Cold, their exoskeletons deflected small arms fire, and their speed made them difficult targets. But the humans had advantages the Zethric did not expect. They worked together as a coordinated unit, covering each other and falling back in organized formations. When a Zethrock warrior broke through their line, multiple soldiers would focus fire on it until it fell. More importantly, the humans refused to give up. Even when wounded, they continued fighting. Marines with broken bones crawled toward enemy positions with grenades clutched in their hands. Soldiers who ran out of ammunition used their rifles as clubs or drew combat knives to continue the battle. The Zethrock had never faced an enemy that preferred death to surrender. In their experience, all intelligent species valued their own survival above everything else. The idea of sacrificing oneself for others was alien to predators who viewed the universe as a simple equation of hunter and prey. As the day wore on, the battle raged through the streets of New Texas's main settlement. Every building became a fortress, every window a firing position. Human civilians joined the fighting, using whatever weapons they could find. Farmers carried hunting rifles, miners brought industrial explosives, and even children threw rocks at the invading warriors. The Zethrak slowly gained ground, but at a cost that Commander Vex found difficult to believe. By nightfall, nearly 500 of his warriors lay dead in the streets of the human colony. Some had been killed by military weapons, but others had fallen to improvised bombs, sniper fire from civilian hunters, and even hand-to-hand combat. With determined colonists, as Vex stood over the body of one of his best warriors, he tried to understand what had gone wrong. The human who had killed this soldier was nothing special, just a middle-aged farmer with a simple rifle. But somehow, this soft pink creature had managed to defeat a Zethrak warrior bred for combat from birth. The battle for New Texas continued for 3 more days. The humans fought for every street, every building, every room. They used tactics the Zethrak had never seen before, turning the colony into a maze of death traps and ambush points. By the time the last human defender fell, Commander Vex controlled a burning wasteland populated by corpses. 2,000 Zethrak warriors had died taking New Texas. It was more casualties than the 7th Fleet had suffered in their previous 10 conquests combined. As Vex surveyed the devastation, he realized that something fundamental had changed. For the first time in 3,000 years, the apex predators had encountered prey that fought back with the fury of hunters. The humans were not like other species. They were something new, something dangerous. And somewhere in the depths of space, more of them were coming. The emergency signal for New Texas reached Earth 4 days after the invasion began. Admiral Kate Sullivan was drinking her morning coffee in the command center when the message arrived through quantum communications. The transmission was broken and filled with static, but the words came through clearly enough. This is Colonel Lisa Hayes, New Texas Colonial Defense Force. We are under attack by hostile alien forces. Repeat, we are under attack. They are killing civilians. They are killing everyone. Request immediate assistance. We cannot hold much longer. Kate set down her coffee cup with hands that barely trembled. She had served in the Colonial Defense Force for 25 years, fighting pirates and settling border disputes, but humanity had never faced anything like this. An alien invasion was the nightmare scenario that military planners had prepared for but never expected to see. Within an hour, the news had spread across human space. Every colony world, every space station, every ship in the void received the same terrible message. Humanity was no longer alone in the universe, and their new neighbors were trying to kill them. The reaction was swift and fierce. On Earth, President William Carter authorized the mobilization of every available military asset. The Colonial Defense Force, the Earth Navy, the Colonial Marines, even the Merchant Marine were placed under military command. Shipyards that built cargo vessels began converting them into warships. Factories that made farming equipment started producing weapons and ammunition. But the strongest reaction came from the colonies themselves. Jake Morrison's final transmission from New Texas had included images of the alien attackers, and those pictures ignited something primal in human hearts. The creatures were monsters from humanity's darkest nightmares, and they were killing human families. On Mars, Governor Pete Johnson mobilized the entire planetary militia. On Europa Station, dock workers volunteered to crew armed freighters. On the mining colonies of the asteroid belt, tough men and women who spent their lives breaking rocks with explosives began loading their ships with mining charges and heading toward New Texas. Admiral Sullivan stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Earth defense ship Liberty, as the hastily assembled human fleet prepared to depart. It was not an impressive sight by military standards. Most of the ships were converted civilian vessels with weapons bolted to their hulls. Mining ships carried industrial lasers instead of ore processors. Cargo haulers had been fitted with missile pods. Even passenger liners had been armed with whatever weapons could be found. The Liberty itself was a 30-year-old cruiser that had seen better days. Its armor was patched in several places, and its main guns were older than some of the crew members. But it was the largest warship humanity could field, and it would have to do. Captain Rick Turner commanded a converted ore hauler called the Lone Star. His ship had been hauling iron ore between the asteroid mines and Earth's orbital foundries when the call went out. Now its cargo holds were filled with mining explosives, and its industrial cutting lasers had been reconfigured as weapons. "Admiral, this is crazy," Rick transmitted to the Liberty. "We're farmers and miners and truck drivers. These things killed trained soldiers on New Texas. What chance do we have against them?" Kate's response came back calm and steady. "We have something they don't expect, Captain. We have each other, and we have something to fight for." Meanwhile, on New Texas, Commander Vex was discovering that winning the battle had not ended the war. The main human settlement was under Zethric control, but the planet was far from pacified. Human survivors had escaped into the wilderness, and they were proving to be a constant source of trouble. The Zethric had expected the remaining humans to flee the planet or hide in caves until they could be hunted down. Instead, they formed guerrilla bands that struck at Zethrock patrols and supply lines. These attacks were not random acts of desperation, but coordinated strikes that showed tactical intelligence. Sergeant Jim Parker led one of these resistance groups. He was a former colonial Marine who had been on leave visiting his sister's farm when the invasion began. Now he commanded 40 survivors, including farmers, miners, and even teenagers who had lost their families in the attack. Jim's group had established a hidden base in the mountains north of the main settlement. From there, they launched raids against isolated Zethric positions. They used their knowledge of the local terrain to set ambushes, plant booby traps, and disappear before the aliens could respond. The Zethrock warriors found this type of warfare frustrating and confusing. They were bred for direct combat, not for hunting elusive enemies who refused to stand and fight. Every patrol that left the main base risked attack from invisible foes, who struck without warning and vanished like ghosts. Lieutenant Crix reported the situation to Commander Vex with obvious irritation. "The human survivors are becoming more organized, sir. They have established supply caches throughout the mountain region and appear to be communicating with each other using some form of encrypted radio network." Vex studied the tactical display, showing the locations of recent attacks. The humans were not acting like defeated enemies. They were behaving like predators, studying their prey and striking at moments of weakness. It was disturbing behavior for creatures that should have been cowering in fear. "Increase patrols in the mountain region," he ordered. "Hunt down these survivors and eliminate them." But the increased patrols only gave the human resistance more targets. Jim Parker's group had salvaged military equipment from the destroyed colonial defense forces, including advanced sniper rifles and anti-vehicle missiles. They used these weapons to devastating effect against Zethrock warriors who were not expecting organized resistance. The situation became worse when other human forces began arriving in the New Texas system. The first ships appeared on the edge of the star system 5 days after Admiral Sullivan's fleet departed Earth. They were not military vessels, but civilian ships, carrying volunteers from nearby colonies. These ships did not attempt to land on the planet or engage the Zethric fleet directly. Instead, They began launching small pods toward the planet's surface under cover of darkness. Each pod contained supplies for the resistance fighters, including weapons, ammunition, medical supplies, and communication equipment. Commander Vex watched from the bridge of the Blood Talon as more human ships continued to arrive. By the end of the week, nearly 100 vessels had gathered at the edge of the system. Most were small civilian craft that his bioships could destroy easily, but their behavior puzzled him. The humans were not fleeing or negotiating for the return of their colony. They were gathering like scavengers around a kill site, waiting for something. Vex had never seen prey species behave this way. Usually, they abandoned lost colonies and retreated to safer territory. Then the main human fleet arrived. Admiral Sullivan's force dropped out of hyperspace in a perfect battle formation. 150 ships of various sizes and configurations, all broadcasting the same message on all frequencies. This is Admiral Kate Sullivan of the Earth Defense Force. You have attacked human civilians and committed acts of war against humanity. Surrender immediately or face the consequences. Vex studied the approaching human fleet with professional interest. Their ships were primitive compared to Zethric biovessels, but there were many of them. More importantly, they showed no signs of fear or hesitation. They were advancing directly toward his position, ready to fight for their conquered colony. For the first time in his military career, Commander Vex felt something he had never experienced before. He felt like he was being hunted. The humans had not come to New Texas to rescue survivors or negotiate a treaty. They had come to take their world back, and they seemed perfectly willing to die in the attempt. The apex predators of the galaxy were about to learn what happened when they threatened a pack species that refused to abandon its own. The space battle for New Texas began at exactly 1400 hours, ship time. Admiral Kate Sullivan gave the order to attack from the Bridge of the Liberty, and 150 human ships charged toward the Zethric biofleet like an angry swarm of metal hornets. Commander Vex watched the approaching human vessels with growing confusion. Their attack formation made no tactical sense. Instead of maintaining proper spacing and coordinated firing positions, the human ships were scattered across a wide front like a pack of wild animals. Some were large military cruisers, others were tiny civilian craft that should have been running away from the battle. Begin standard engagement protocol. Vex ordered his fleet commanders. Target the largest vessels first, then eliminate the smaller craft. The Zethric bioships moved with organic grace, their living hulls rippling as weapon ports opened like hungry mouths. Energy beams lanced out toward the human fleet, deadly accurate fire that should have destroyed multiple targets with each volley. But something unexpected happened. The human ships did not try to avoid the incoming fire. Instead, they flew directly into it. Captain Rick Turner piloted his converted ore hauler, the Lone Star, straight toward the nearest Zethrac biocruiser. His ship's hull was already glowing red from energy weapon hits, and his crew was fighting. Fires on 3 different decks. By hull logic, he should have been retreating or trying to find cover. Instead, he opened a communication channel to every ship in the human fleet. This is the Lone Star. We're going in. Make it count. Rick's ship was loaded with mining explosives, enough industrial charges to crack open an asteroid. He aimed his vessel directly at the Zethric cruiser's weapon cluster and pushed his engines to maximum power. The alien ship tried to destroy him before impact, but the Lone Star was already too close and moving too fast. The explosion lit up space like a new star. The Lone Star and the Zethrac biocruiser vanished in a ball of fire and shattered metal. But Rick's sacrifice had accomplished something important. It showed the other human captains that the alien ships could be hurt, and it demonstrated a tactic that the Zethrac had never encountered before. Across the battlefield, Other human ships began copying Rick's example. Mining vessels loaded with explosives rammed into Zethrak hulls. Passenger liners converted into fire ships crashed into alien weapon ports. Even small courier craft, packed with chemical explosives, dove into the organic vessels like guided missiles. The Zethrak had never fought an enemy that used suicide, attacks as a primary battle tactic. Their bioships were designed to regenerate, damage and adapt to enemy weapons, but they could not adapt to being completely destroyed by ramming attacks. Each human sacrifice took a Zethrak vessel out of the battle permanently. But the humans were not just throwing their lives away randomly. Admiral Sullivan coordinated the attacks from the Liberty, directing her scattered fleet with the skill of a master chess player. She used the suicide runs to cover the advance of her larger warships, creating gaps in the Zethrak formation that her cruisers could exploit. All remaining vessels, focus fire on the enemy flagship, Sullivan ordered. Take out their command ship, and the rest will lose coordination. The Blood Talon found itself under attack from 6 different directions at once. Human ships that had looked like easy targets moments before were now firing everything they had. At Vex's command vessel, mining lasers designed to cut through solid rock carved deep wounds in the bioship's living hull. Missile volleys from converted cargo haulers overwhelmed the alien point defense systems. Commander Vex felt his ship shudder under the sustained assault. The Blood Talon's regenerative systems were working frantically to repair the damage, but the humans were causing destruction faster than the bioship could heal. Green blood leaked from dozens of wounds in the organic hull. "Sir, we're losing structural integrity on decks 7 through 12, Lieutenant Crix reported. The humans are targeting our weak points with surgical precision. That was the most disturbing part of the human attack. They were not fighting like desperate animals. They were learning from each exchange, adapting their tactics to exploit Zethrak weaknesses. Somehow, they had figured out how to hurt bioships in ways that prevented regeneration. Dr. Alex Chun had provided that crucial intelligence. The human xenobiologist had been captured during the initial invasion of New Texas, but he had spent his time in captivity studying his captors. When Sergeant Jim Parker's resistance fighters rescued him 3 days later, Alex carried detailed notes about Zethrak biology and technology. The information had been transmitted to Admiral Sullivan's fleet just before the battle began. The humans now knew that Zethrak bioships required specific nutrients to maintain their living systems. They knew which sections of the ships housed critical organs. Most importantly, they knew that concentrated fire on certain areas could cause cascading failures that the regenerative systems could not repair. Armed with this knowledge, the human fleet systematically dismantled the Zethrak formation. Ships that had seemed unstoppable suddenly found themselves bleeding and dying as human weapons found their vital organs. The tide of battle began to turn as bioship after bioship succumbed to targeted attacks. The fighting lasted 6 hours and ended with the complete destruction of the Zethrak invasion force. Of the 50 bioships that had arrived at New Texas, only 1 survived. The Blood Talon limped away from the battlefield, its hull cracked and bleeding, carrying the shocking news of defeat back to the Zethrak Empire. Commander Vex stood in the ruins of his bridge, trying to understand what had happened. His warriors were the apex predators of the galaxy. They had conquered 47 star systems without a single defeat. But the humans had destroyed his entire fleet using converted civilian ships and improvised tactics. The humans had done something that no other species had ever accomplished. They had adapted to Zethrak's superiority and found ways to overcome it. They had studied their enemies, learned their weaknesses, and turned those weaknesses into weapons. Most disturbing of all, they had shown a willingness to sacrifice themselves for the survival of their species. As the Blood Talon fled through hyperspace, Vex composed his report to Emperor Krieg, The message was simple but terrifying. The Zethrak had found their match. The humans were not like other prey species. They were something new, something dangerous. They were predators who had learned to hunt the hunters. On New Texas, the surviving human resistance fighters emerged from their mountain hideouts to see the wreckage of the Zethrak fleet scattered across their sky. Admiral Sullivan's ships began landing troops to secure the planet and hunt down the remaining alien warriors. The colony was free, but everyone knew this was just the beginning. News of the victory spread across human space faster than light. Itself, every colony world, every space station, every ship in the void received the same incredible message. Humanity had won its first battle against the galactic predators. The monsters could be beaten, but the humans also knew that the Zethrak Empire would not accept this defeat quietly. Somewhere in the depths of space, the aliens were preparing their response. The real war was just beginning, and humanity would need every advantage they could find to survive what was coming. The prey had become predators, but the original hunters were not ready to give up their throne. The galaxy was about to witness a war unlike anything it had ever seen, a conflict between two species that refused to surrender, and both claimed to be the apex predators of the universe. Emperor Krieg Vorthik stood in the war chamber of the Imperial Palace, his 4 red eyes fixed on the holographic display showing the ruins of his 7th Fleet. The images came from Commander Vex's damaged flagship, the only ship to escape the disaster at New Texas. 50 bioships destroyed by primitive humans using converted cargo, vessels, and mining equipment. The Emperor's claws scraped against the living floor as he processed the impossible news. For 3,000 years, the Zethrak Empire had been unstoppable. They were evolution's perfect killing machines, apex predators who ruled the galaxy through strength and fear. No species had ever defeated them in open battle. Until now. Assemble the Grand Fleet, Krieg commanded his generals. Every bioship, every warrior, every weapon in the Empire. We will end this human infestation before it spreads. Within days, the largest military force in galactic history began gathering around Ketronus Prime. 500 bioships, each one a living weapon of mass destruction. 1 million Zethrak warriors, bred for combat from birth and trained to kill anything that moved. The entire might of the Empire focused on one goal, the complete extinction of humanity. But while the Zethrak prepared their overwhelming response, the humans were not sitting idle. The victory at New Texas had taught them valuable lessons about their enemy, and they were putting that knowledge to deadly use. Captain Sarah Wells commanded a small human strike force operating deep in Zethrak space. Her ship, the Ghost Runner, was a modified stealth courier that could slip past alien sensors undetected. For the past month, she had been leading raids against isolated Zethrak outposts and supply convoys. The humans had learned from Dr. Alex Chun's research that Zethrak bioships required special nutrients to maintain their living systems. These biological resources were transported in heavily defended convoy ships from the Empire's agricultural worlds to military bases throughout their territory. Sarah's team specialized in destroying these convoys. They would strike fast and hard, crippling the supply ships before vanishing back into the void. Without proper nutrition, the bioships began to weaken and die, leaving entire Zethrak fleets stranded and helpless. Target confirmed, announced Lieutenant Dan Foster from the sensor station. 3 supply ships with minimal escort, carrying biological nutrients for the Ketronus fleet. Sarah smiled grimly as she studied the tactical display. The Zethrak convoy was following a predictable route through an asteroid field, confident that no enemy would dare attack so deep in Imperial space. They were about to learn how wrong they were. All ships, attack formation, Sarah ordered her small fleet. Remember, hit the supply vessels and get out. were not here to fight a battle. The human attack came without warning from multiple directions at once. Modified mining ships emerged from behind asteroids, their industrial lasers cutting through the bioship hulls like knives through butter. The Zethrak escorts tried to respond, but they were outnumbered and outmaneuvered by opponents who knew exactly how to hurt them. Within minutes, all 3 supply ships were destroyed, their precious cargo spilling into space like green blood. The human raiders vanished back into the asteroid field before reinforcements could arrive, leaving behind only wreckage and confused alien survivors. Similar attacks were happening throughout Zethrak space. Human raiders struck at communication relays, destroyed supply depots, and sabotaged orbital facilities. The aliens found themselves fighting an enemy who refused to stand still and be destroyed. The humans hit and ran like ghosts, always striking where they were least expected. Meanwhile, back in human space, every shipyard and factory was working around the clock to prepare for the coming war. The Colonial Defense Force had learned from the new Texas battle and was implementing new strategies based on human advantages. Admiral Kate Sullivan stood in the command center on Earth, coordinating the largest military buildup in human history. The wall displays showed ships under construction, weapons being manufactured, and defensive positions being established throughout human territory. "Status report," she called to her staff officers. "Operation Hornet's Nest is proceeding on schedule," reported Colonel Mike Davis. "We now have over 3,000 automated strike vessels ready for deployment. Each one is loaded with high explosives and programmed to seek out Zethrak biosignatures." The Hornet's Nest project was humanity's answer to Zethrak numerical superiority. If the aliens wanted to fight with overwhelming numbers, the humans would give them more targets than they could handle. Thousands of small, unmanned ships would swarm the enemy fleet like angry wasps, each one carrying enough explosives to cripple a bioship. "What about the hybrid technology program?" Sullivan asked. "Progressing better than expected," answered Dr. Lisa Chun, Alex's sister and the project's lead scientist. "We've successfully integrated Zethrak biotechnology with human engineering. The new ships can regenerate damage like alien vessels while maintaining our tactical flexibility." The hybrid ships were humanity's most ambitious project. Using biological samples recovered from the new Texas battle, human scientists had learned to grow living hull sections that could repair themselves. Combined with human weapons and tactics, these vessels represented a new form of warfare that neither species had seen before. The final confrontation came in the Proxima sector, where Admiral Sullivan had assembled the largest human fleet in ice history. Every available ship from Earth and the colonies formed a defensive line in space, waiting for the Zethrak Grand Fleet to arrive. When Emperor Krieg's armada dropped out of hyperspace, it was a sight that should have terrified any rational enemy. 500 bioships arranged in perfect formation, their living hulls pulsing with malevolent life. The sheer size of the force dwarfed anything humanity could field, but the humans were not intimidated. They had learned too much about their enemy to be frightened by mere numbers. "All ships execute Prometheus Protocol," Admiral Sullivan broadcast to her fleet. Across human space, hidden facilities activated simultaneously. Thousands of automated strike ships emerged from concealed bases, asteroid hideouts, and camouflage stations. They converged on the Zethrak fleet like a plague of mechanical locusts, overwhelming the alien point defenses through sheer volume. The battle raged for 18 hours across multiple star systems. Zethrak bioships that had never known defeat found themselves facing an enemy that refused to fight by conventional rules. Human ships used ramming attacks, swarm tactics, and coordinated sacrifices that broke apart the alien formation. The hybrid vessels proved devastating in combat. They could absorb punishment like Zethrak bioships while delivering precise strikes with human weapons. When damaged, They regenerated their wounds and continued fighting. The aliens found themselves facing opponents who combined the best features of both technologies. Emperor Krieg watched his invincible fleet being systematically destroyed by creatures he had considered inferior prey. His own flagship was surrounded by human boarding parties led by Sergeant Amy Rodriguez, a tough Marine who had lost her family on New Texas Dot as Amy's soldiers fought their way through the bioship's corridors. Krieg finally understood what made humans so dangerous. They did not fight for conquest or glory. They fought for each other, for their families, for their species. That kind of motivation made them nearly unstoppable. The war ended not with total victory for either side, but with an unprecedented peace treaty. The surviving Zethrak found themselves facing a choice: extinction or coexistence with the species that had defeated them. Amazingly, they chose to share the galaxy. Years later, Zethrak and human ships would patrol space together, a partnership born from mutual respect, earned through blood and battle. The predators had learned that evolution never stops, and sometimes the most dangerous hunters are those who were once considered prey. The galaxy had a new order, one where apex predators could be challenged and defeated by species willing to adapt, sacrifice, and never surrender. Humanity had proven that intelligence, cooperation, and sheer stubborn determination could overcome any advantage. The hunt was over, and the prey had won.